Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here from the Campus Corner Studios. Welcome back to the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. Josh McQuistion down in Houston at Scoop HQ headquarters via south of the Red River, if you will. Really cool promotion right now as Oklahoma heads into the final week of the regular season. For you out there, the YouTube viewer, a special offer for $1. You can get Soonerscoop.com for 2 months. Seems pretty easy. I don't need to really sell it that much, as I think anybody that is probably watching this knows we have a fantastic website, Soonerscoop.com. Maybe you've heard of it, George. All you got to do is use the promo code OU and the number 1, OU1, for 2 months of Soonerscoop for literally $1. That is better than the usual price out there of $1 for 1 month. You're getting an extra month. So really good promo right now for On3 and Soonerscoop.com. Josh, how goes it? This is kind of weird. It is weird that as Oklahoma heads into the final week of the regular season, and this week's a little bit different. We talked to Brent Venables on Monday, just a little bit ago. We left the stadium as Oklahoma preps for what will be a Friday kickoff. I believe it's the first Friday kickoff in Norman since OU Nebraska in 1994. So kind of weird way to end the season, but we'll get into the BYU stuff here in a little bit, but it is going to be a little bit of a weird week with the Friday kickoff and then, with the stuff around Dillon Gabriel and kind of just coming out of what was a really strange game in Provo.
Yeah, this is going to be, it's so strange. Again, you guys live it more than I do, but even with just the condensed week, I mean, all the stuff, the scheduling that gets changed up, not even for us, but I mean, you talked about, Oklahoma practicing on a Sunday night, kind of going through all that and how that affects their schedule and those kind of things. That's again, guys, I mean, you have to wonder how different this looks with Dillon Gabriel and his, the injury we believe happened. What does that do on a 6-day schedule? Because as I understand it, that's not really possible. So that's just one of those things that we're going to have to monitor, because I'm very interested to see how that plays out.
No doubt about it. George, it is weird too, and I guess we can hit on it real quick before we get to some recruiting stuff. It is weird the way that Brent's talked about the Dillon Gabriel injury, just in terms of, he labeled it a upper body injury on Saturday, which I think everybody kind of knows that it wasn't necessarily upper body. It was like upper brain, if you will. But the way that he talked about it today and saying that he was progressing nicely along with Jalil Farouk, I would expect Jalil to play. I just have a hard time thinking that DG is going to be able to play in this game on Friday.
That was a good prognosis from Dr. Radosevich.
Thank you. I don't get enough. I don't get enough attention for what I term to be pretty good medical evaluations.
No, definitely. But yeah, I mean, you look at the concussion protocol, and I know in the NFL, it's usually about a 6 to 7 day window of having to pass certain tests, whether that's a test that you take on a computer just to make sure your brain is functioning right, to conditioning and being able to wear a helmet, then taking contact, all those things that you have to test before you're able to play. So, Josh is right. On a short week, what does that look like? Sure. Even if DG is cleared by Friday, is he taking the reps in practice? I don't know. The way Brent talked about it today, sounds like he's going to maybe even practice this week. I mean, he was talking about he thinks they're going to be back pretty quickly. I don't know. Is that gamesmanship? Maybe. We'll see. I think Jackson Arnold's probably going to get still a lot of reps in practice, and he kind of talked about that today too, that the 1s and 2s get a lot of reps as it is, very similar reps in practice. But I wonder if even if Dillon is, practicing a little bit, if they try to rotate Jackson in a little bit more just to get some more time. Because we saw in the game, guys, he misses Nick Anderson. And I think some of that, he was a little bit juiced up in that moment. He knew he had Nick Anderson wide open. But some of that's also just chemistry and, throwing with a lot of these guys in practice and those things. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do that this week. And again, I hope Dillon's able to play on Friday. It's his last game at Owen Field for Oklahoma, so I hope he gets to play. And I'd also like to see Jackson, though, too, because I do think Jackson, you give him a week of preparation, he'll probably be a lot better than what he was on Saturday.
It looked really good, Josh. Just in terms of, let's just stick with Jackson here for a second. Now that we're rolling his video from Saturday, a lot like probably everybody else out there, as I look up at the beginning of the third quarter and see Oklahoma's offense trotting out to the field in a 17-17 game, it was kind of one of those OS moments. Like, what's wrong with Dillon Gabriel? And it's kind of ironic, too, with all the talk last week about preserving his red shirt. I think that we sat here 1 week ago today talking about, if something were to happen to Dillon Gabriel, it was going to be Jackson Arnold. So that wasn't necessarily surprising. I think it was just the surprise was, when did he get hurt? What happened? And then, later on, I think, George, you tweeted out that Chris Plank had reported on the OU radio broadcast that it was a head injury. And Josh, just in terms of Jackson and what he was thrown into on Saturday, what did you think about the way that he performed?
I thought it was probably about as much as you could expect from a freshman in that scenario. Because, guys,
Sure.
It's not, and I know I'm not saying anything new here, but it's not just about, he's getting thrown into a tie ball game on the road, hostile environment, all those obvious things. We know that he wasn't getting the majority of snaps in practice. Now, I know Brent will say, the ones and twos, but Dillon's gotten most of it. He's lived it. And Jackson's never been in a situation like that in a college game. And I thought the play that best embodied that was the Tawi Walker screen that was wide open. That's a big play waiting to happen. And he just put a little too much on it. He just needed to loft it and kind of let Tawi run under it. And again, that's not Jackson Arnold's terrible, or like, that's not what it is. It's just, you understand it. He was jacked up in that moment. I thought it was really honest of him to admit in the post game, I was a little nervous. And that's normal. That's human. You almost wonder sometimes if some of these guys are robots when they're like, oh no, I was fine. And they're either robotic or they're lying. You can choose either one you want there. But I thought he settled in. I thought on that last drive, that tough run he made on that second and 5, I think it was, where he just, and got a little help from Gavin Sawchuk. I thought it showed a lot of toughness. They didn't have their fastball. They weren't perfect. He's got a lot, that he can look at over the week, but he also didn't do anything that hurt the team. He didn't put them in bad situations. He didn't make throws he should have or shouldn't have. What I noticed was, I thought, if anything, his clock was really good. Like the run that gets called back on the Stogner block in the back, he was right. Like, okay, it's time to get out. Like, and he got out of the pocket, made a play with his feet. So you'd rather that than a guy like, he's got to speed it up a little bit. Like, just slow down, let it calm, because there were a few times where I thought he was in a little bit of a hurry. But in general, I think there's a lot for him to build on, even from a performance that statistically doesn't look like all that much.
I thought, too, Eddie, he was just really mentally tough in terms of coming in, like you said, Josh, dealing with everything that was going on in that game. And then physically tough. I mean, people forget the run he had on that final drive. I think it was 2nd and 10, and he takes off. It was like a quarterback power, and it looks like he's going to get stopped maybe 5 yards short, and he runs over a guy. He breaks another tackle, and then he dives forward and gets another huge first down to set up the next first down, in which he checks into. And everybody's heard the story now of him audibling into the slant call, and as impressive as that was, it also tells you he's coachable, right? Because that's something that they had practiced all week, a look that they had seen all week and talked about, and then having the presence of mind in that moment, knowing how important that down is to check into that, and then deliver a perfect pass to Farouk. Look, did he miss some throws? Definitely. Did he have some nervousness? Obviously. But I do think that the future is still bright with Jackson Arnold if you look at the positives coming out of that game.
That second one to Jalil Farouk that basically ends the game. Big time throw, as you said, George. That was something that Jeff Lebby talked about after the game, saying that they had practiced it all week. They knew it when they got that look, when they got the zero blitz, they were going to go to exactly that. And for him to recall that, and as you said, be coachable in that moment, deliver the throw to Jalil Farouk. I thought the throw to Farouk the series before that ultimately ended with the Zach Schmidt missed field goal. Big time throw. So it is kind of exciting. I agree with you. Would love to see Dillon Gabriel get that opportunity to play in Norman one final time. But, if they have to go to Jackson Arnold, it is going to be kind of exciting because I think TCU is a little bit of a, kind of a wild card in terms of what you're going to get. But it is a team that played for the national championship a year ago and should be a really kind of cool atmosphere if he's going to get the call on Saturday, as you saw here with Jackson Arnold after the game in Provo. I thought that was a really cool scene Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables, they couldn't be more ecstatic. It was kind of interesting, too, after the game, and just hearing Brent and the way that he did his post-game press conference as well as Jeff Lebby, George, it seemed like they were extremely happy, if not for any other reason, to know that they played pretty poorly at times on Saturday, and they got away with it. They walked out of there with a win, something they weren't able to do in Lawrence and Stillwater.
Well, and they have Billy Bowman to thank for that. You think of the pick six. I mean, that changes. That's a 14-point swing. I mean,
sure.
BYU's running the ball down Oklahoma's throat. They get down to, the 2 or 3 yard line, and all of a sudden they decide to throw the ball, and Billy Bowman makes a great play, jumps the pass, and takes it the length of the field. I mean, that's maybe the best play of the season other than, the drive down to beat Texas. I mean, that was one of those plays you won't forget. And then, Danny Stutzman playing through the food poisoning, the flu, whatever it was he had, coming up with the big strip sack. I think it was 3 plays later. Gavin Sawchuk has a nice run, which, by the way, we got to give Gavin Sawchuk his flowers. He's been playing great the last few weeks. I think it's 3 straight games with over 100 yards. He's their clear number 1 running back. It seems like they're finally finding something on the ground. The offensive line's coming together. So, they were able to escape. And look, was OU 24-point favorites? Yes. Did they play bad? Definitely. But that's a game, and we've said this several times this year, that's a game they lose a year ago. Heck, they probably lose it a few weeks ago when you think about how the Kansas and Oklahoma State games finished. So I think you take a win and you move on. I mean, last year they were 0-5 in one-score games. This year they're 3-2, beating Texas, UCF, and now BYU. And you can argue the UCF and BYU games shouldn't have been that close, but they were, and they were able to find a way to win. And you take those things as baby steps moving forward for the program.
Yeah.
I think it's sorry, Eddie. I think it's just briefly, I think it's a testament, like George is talking about. A couple of weeks ago, they made the catastrophic mistakes you couldn't make, and that's why they lost to Kansas. That's why they lost to Oklahoma State. However inefficient they were, however they poor they were in run defense, they didn't do things that killed them. They didn't make the play that you just can't make, and they kind of kept finding a way to just kind of keep BYU at arm's distance. BYU tied up, they go back and score. They just kind of kept finding a way. And like you said, George, that's not something they did a couple of weeks ago.
Well, and I think that, as much as the defense didn't play well on Saturday, they came up with some big stops at the right time. And, I told you guys before we started this, if Billy Bowman doesn't make the play that he did with the pick six, the 3rd pick six in Oklahoma school history, joining Julian Wilson as of late, I believe 2014, 2015, something like that, I don't think they win the football game.
No.
Like, if they fall behind and then all of a sudden you're turning to Jackson Arnold and saying you need to put a drive together and go score the football to tie the game back up, as you said, George, that's a 14-point swing there.
Yeah, it was a massive play, and Billy has been so good this year. What is he up to? Is it 4 or 5 interceptions this year? He has 2 pick sixes.
Yeah, I believe 5.
He's had just an incredible season, which makes you think, could this be it for him at Oklahoma? I know we talked about that a few weeks ago, that he's already, jumping up some draft boards. I wonder, after the performance he had this week, because not only the pick six, but
I was getting ready to say
there was a lot of plays where he comes up and he makes a tackle, and it could have been a touchdown. If not for him, stopping it for, a 10 or 12 yard gain, whatever it was, because they were gashing him at some point. So Billy's been fantastic. You wonder about the linebackers. Definitely the worst game that they've played this season. They ended up putting Kobe McKenzie in for most of the second half. I thought he came in and played at least better than Kip Lewis and Jaron Kanik. Some of that is that Stutzman being sick. I don't know. Josh, what did you see? Because I know Brent talked a little bit today about, everybody was saying, defensive line was just getting whooped. He goes, that wasn't the case. It was, one guy not filling their gap, and especially at linebacker, they just didn't play very well.
Yeah, and that definitely shows up on tape. I mean, there is, and it got to the point where I'm doing the idiot, and it's like, I'm not going to do every play like this, because, it's just one after another, just a guy out of position, and not moving with the flow of the play. You'd see a guy, okay, this is where the A gap was, but they're sliding right. You've got to move with it. They talk about all the time, those moving gaps. But I think with I did want to say, the thing that people forget about that pick six with Billy Bowman, he made the tackle to make that possible. Robin scores if not for Billy Bowman kind of just hurdling him, just kind of dragging him down at the goal line, or he scores and that play's not even possible. So again, Billy was as good as everybody will remember that pick six. Like, go back and watch. I've got several of the plays highlighted in the Idiot this week. He was unbelievable. One of the better games of his career, even without that pick six. I thought he was great. But yeah, to your original question, George, the defensive line, it's an interesting conversation because there's no doubt they didn't play well. And for whatever reason, they can't seem to put together a very strong game away from home. Yeah. I don't know what it is, at least as of late. I mean, they played well against Texas, but Kansas, they got pushed around. Oklahoma State was better, but still, they kind of lacked consistency. And I thought kind of the opposite of what we're talking about here against BYU, where the linebackers, I think, cleaned up some of their messes. Here, I thought the defensive line was the better of the two. But, guys, against one of the worst offensive lines in the Big 12, they had 4 tackles for loss. You can call that whatever you want. And I think 2 of them are Danny Stutzman. So, like, what are, I don't think anybody is going to sit there and say their hands are clean on this.
Also, it's highway robbery that Danny Stutzman is not a Butkus Award semifinalist. I'm not saying he should be a finalist, but the dude, what he means to this football team is
unbelievable. It counts for something, right?
Yeah, and statistically, he's up there. I mean, I think he leads of all the guys that made semifinals. He has more tackles for loss, and I think he has more tackles than half of them. The guy means so much for this defense, and you can see it when he doesn't play. It's just different. I mean, I don't know if it's a communication thing, if it's just him being on the field and everybody feeling more comfortable.
It's everything.
It's all of it. And again, we're talking about 2 guys. I mean, Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman, if they can somehow convince those 2 to come back next year, I think this defense could be really, really special.
Well, guys, I was trying to think of the last time that Oklahoma had preseason arguably All-American type guys and definitely like legitimate Thorpe and Butkus Award finalists on their roster. I mean, guys, we could be talking like 2000s, like Kalmus and Williams and those kind of guys.
I'm sure that is going to be a something of a sales job here over the next month before you have to really truly make a decision. I know I asked Danny this morning. He comes on the radio program and he basically gave the haven't really thought about it type of answer. But I do think that, his connection with some of the linebackers in that room, specifically Kobe and Jaron and kind of the bond that those guys have, I think he will want to come back and, basically kind of go after something that he wasn't able to get. And that's a Butkus Award. That's an All-American status. That's, playing for a team that has a chance to win a national championship, really set a foundation for what the program's going to be in the SEC here moving forward. But it will be interesting as they only have 1 game left in the regular season, and that's coming up on Friday. We can hit on a little bit more of the BYU OU stuff here at the end. This is a little bit of a recruiting report, as we do every Monday here on Soonerscoop.com's YouTube page. Josh, I know that OK Preps, high school playoffs in full swing here in Oklahoma, as well as around the country. The pursuit of 2025 Washington tight end Nate Roberts continues for Oklahoma. Our guy Brig Bates went down there on Friday night, checked in on the defending 2A state champion Washington Warriors. Just in terms of Oklahoma and Nate Roberts, still feel pretty good about that situation, right?
Yeah, I do. And, talking to some people and now, kind of for some perspective, there was a prediction put in by a Notre Dame writer for Ohio State last week, I believe on 24/7. And I think there was some, is this about to happen? I don't get the impression that Nate Roberts is ready to make a decision. I know there's a feeling, by him and by those around him that he kind of rushed into that Notre Dame decision over the spring and summer. And, it's obviously since backed out of that commitment. So I think he's going to be very patient. I think it's kind of a battle, for those. I know it's sometimes tough to keep track of all the schools involved. I think it's going to be kind of an O battle. I think Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Oregon are the 3 schools I kind of hear sticking out to him the most. I think Oklahoma, obviously the proximity is huge. I'd still where I think he'll end up eventually. Over the summer, I had kind of thought, okay, maybe something's really about to happen. I think that's that's tempered a little bit, but I don't think it has anything to do with Oklahoma slipping for him. I think it's just him making sure. I don't want to go through the decommitment process again. I don't want to mess with all that. He's just trying to make sure he knows what he's doing. And again, I like where Oklahoma is. I think they're the odds-on favorite, but there's no question. Ohio State's really impressed him. Tight end coach came down a few weeks ago, really spent all day in Washington, really made sure Roberts knew what a priority he was for them as a recruit. So, again, another guy in this 2025 class in state that we've talked about that is not just a really good Oklahoma prospect, but a, elite national type of player.
It's still wild to me to think that Oklahoma now has 8 commitments within the 2025 recruiting class, 6 of them coming from the state of Oklahoma. And I know that we've talked about, on this YouTube show, on Soonerscoop.com, on the boards, the 2025 class. I don't think that, like, when people look at the 6 and or the 6 guys that are committed from the state of Oklahoma in the 2025, I don't think they get a good grasp on, like, just how good this class is. And historically, it could end up being one of the better classes Oklahoma has produced in 20, 25 years.
I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, like I said, and the gold standard, I've said it forever, is 2006. We talk about it all the time. You've got Sam Bradford, you've got Jermaine Gresham, Gerald McCoy, Dom Franks. You run down the list, a lot of really good players, and even guys like Chase Beeler, who were borderline all conference, all American type players. So you just have so much depth in that group. But guys, I mean, Elijah Thomas is a guy that I think is just underappreciated nationally, and even amongst OU fans. I don't think they know how good he has a chance to be. He is a special player. Got bracketed all season, still had over 1,000 yards. Almost every game, he either had a big punt return, kick return, and then you throw in Jaden Nickens, Alex Shield Knight, who we've talked about a lot last week. You just go down the list, and there are so many quality players in that group. Kevin Sperry, Marcus James, Trinae Washington. I mean, there are so many good ones. And speaking of Nate's a guy that I just, every time I see him, he is better than the time he was before, which kind of reminds me of a guy that's finding a bigger and bigger role at Oklahoma, Jacob Sexton. We used to have that conversation about him, Eddie. His improvement was just always so steady, and that's kind of what I see from Nate as well.
How much is Kevin Sperry kind of leading the charge of that 2025 class? It seems like he's always, and we've talked about this before, Josh, you get a quarterback early in a class, it always helps because they're kind of out doing the recruiting for you at times.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and it saves the staff, okay, we can't be on the phone all the time. And it's, these guys are, we know it. I mean, as media, we're having to stare at our phones all the time and doing this stuff. These guys are constantly, on Instagram or, wherever. They're on all the socials and they're talking, and they get to have these conversations where it's not really a recruiting pitch. It's just, oh, that's my guy, Kevin, or that's, whoever. So it's just so much easier. And I think he has a really good way about him in this stuff, that he's not domineering. He's not pushy about it. He's very likable. He's kind of, all shucks about himself and that kind of stuff. And I think guys respond well to that. And I think that's been a part of this conversation. Now, again, it doesn't hurt that he landed at a school full of Oklahoma targets, and they've just been reeling in one after another over at Carl Albert. So that's part of the conversation, but he is absolutely a big part of this. Guys, one of the few guys I can remember, even for all the in-state commitments through the years, I can't remember many guys that were so frequently in Norman. I mean, he's not going to miss a home game. He'll be there. I don't even have to – Kevin Sperry has reached a point, I don't have to check with him. Like, I know he'll be there Friday. There's not any question. I don't have to hit him up and see, like, oh, what are your plans for Thanksgiving? No, he's going to be there on Friday, and he's going to be talking to whoever's there, whatever tight end it may be, or whatever receiver or whoever. And so, I think that does help Oklahoma build momentum, because it's not just about, oh, this kid's a great recruiter. He's just always there, and there's a real relationship he gets to have with some of these guys.
There is one caveat there. Carl Albert does play at 7 o'clock on Friday night. So that's a little bit of a different thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he'll be able to make it, because they do play down at Noble against Bishop McGinnis. So we'll see.
He'll be there for the first half.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe he'll leave at half.
Sure. No doubt about it. Just in terms of Jordan Seaton, I know that we talked about him here on the YouTube program as well, the IMG offensive tackle, somebody that is teammates of Jaden Jackson and David Stone, who we'll get to in a second. Just in terms of Oklahoma's recruitment, it doesn't sound like Oklahoma's going to make the cut in terms of his finalists.
Yeah, he put out, I believe it was top 6 or 7. I think it was 7 on, I believe it was Thursday. And Oklahoma wasn't on that list. But again, we talked about it when I came back from IMG a couple of weeks ago. Talking to enough people down there, I don't, whether they'd have made the top 3 or the top 2. I think he knows where he's going. I think all the rest is a lot of kind of bluster. Now, I do think NIL has a big hand in his recruitment. So maybe somebody comes in and kind of shocks the world. You get an Oregon situation, or some of these other schools that we know are very functional in the NIL game. Bama, we talk about it all the time, Eddie. I know for all their reputation and all the stuff that maybe existed before NIL, they're not a school that's trying to compete because they don't have to. They know, hey, we're Alabama. You want to come here and you want to play against the best. The NIL is going to be there once you get here and you earn something. That's something they get to kind of stand on. And some kids really like that. Jordan Seaton, I hear various things, but again, just based on the conversations I had and talking to people that I think know him well, I just think it's going to be Alabama. So again, to make the 7, to make the 5, what difference does it make? Like I don't see any reason to continue that. And I'm interested to see what Oklahoma does. And I think largely they're looking at a couple of interior guys, Eddie Pierre-Louis, Tyler Mercer, the Tulane commitment that we talked about last week from Prosper in the north kind of Dallas area. And other than that, I think Oklahoma is going to look to the portal to fix their needs for next year and kind of hope they find maybe a Walter Rouse situation.
Just like everybody else in the country looking to the transfer portal for help on the offensive line. Good luck to everybody involved there. Just in terms of the On 300 rankings, they were updated on what is today? Monday. Just the question is going to be out there. David Stone drops 3 spots from 15 to 18. Cause for concern, Josh?
Well, what I love is this happens right after I go to see him. So the Josh hates OU narrative just gets more fuel to the fire. That's exciting. No, guys, I'll be honest. I thought, based on what I'd seen, I mean, again, it's IMG. David's playing big-time competition almost every week. Now, I saw him on one of the rare occasions when that's not the case. But, guys, I mean, everybody, the night he committed, he's playing St. Joe's in Philadelphia, a big-time program that has a quarterback that Oklahoma was pursuing. So, and David had, a couple sacks, a couple TFLs. Like, it just kind of surprises me that he just keeps slipping a little bit. And I'm like, part of it I understand. His body type's a little unique. Like I said, I think he's best served as a defensive tackle. And he's, 6'4", 265, 270 right now. So he's not plug and play. He's not an obvious guy. You looked at David Hicks last year, who was 6'3", 300 pounds, and you're like, okay, yep, sure, he's almost there. But David's going to need a little time. But at the same time, I think with his athleticism, he can flex around. He can move around a little bit. We talked about it when I came back. Like I could see OU going with some odd front stuff to suit him, and not to suit him, but it would suit him, I guess is the better way to say that. So I think Oklahoma absolutely there's no reason for anyone to feel like anything's happened with David Stone or something's gone wrong. When I saw him 2 weeks ago, I thought he was dominant. I thought he was the best player on the field. Again, I wouldn't take too much out of it. It's when you get to that level, and I say it all the time, you're splitting hairs. I mean, everybody from 1 to 20, they're all great players. They're all unbelievable athletes. It's just kind of what's your favorite flavor of ice cream. I mean, it's all really good.
15th, 18th, doesn't matter. David Stone, I think, is going to be really good.
And he's going to be here before you know it. Obviously with the host of guys that are coming in January, that's just around the corner. In terms of Oklahoma, just the team specific, Josh, as they head into the final regular season game of the year, have we maybe underscored just in terms of the progress this program has made because of that 2-week stretch that didn't look good, and they lost the 2 games that they probably shouldn't have. You do sit here the week of the final regular season game. They're in position to win double-digit wins. have we maybe undersold that, how important it was to get to that 9-10 win total that we had talked about all the way back in August?
I think to a degree, yeah, because when we looked at it in the preseason, guys, we talked about 9-3, 10-2, and we had the conversation, well, at least some of that is because the schedule's so weak. Well, I think we can all concede Oklahoma State's been a better team than anybody thought they were going to be. I know there were a few outliers, but I'm still – I fully admit Oklahoma State has stunned me with how they've kind of pulled this together. And you look around the Big 12, I think UCF has been a little better than maybe some people thought they were going to be. Kansas, I don't know how. I mean, Lance Leipold just keeps working magic. Guys, third string walk on quarterback, and he takes Kansas State to the ropes last week. I mean, that's just unbelievable. So, I mean, I think there's some credit due to the Big 12 being a little better than we thought it was going to be. At the same time, guys, I mean, I understand Oklahoma fans' frustration. I mean, it was all there.
Yeah.
You look at it. I mean, they just avoid shooting themselves in the foot in Stillwater and Lawrence. Even one of them, guys, and they're in the playoff conversation right now. I mean, they're a top 6-7 team, and with what's happened at Florida State and everything, it's all still right in front of them. And 10-2, again, I thought that should be where this team ended up. So I think they're doing well. Now they've got to obviously go and handle business. TCU is one of the more talented teams in the Big 12, but obviously hasn't played all that well, and they're a little shaky at quarterback and all that's going on. But again, I think because of what didn't happen and how expectations changed after Texas, it kind of has shadowed that. I mean, guys, this is going to be a 4-game improvement from one year to the next. That can't be overlooked.
I think it's safe to say they're right at expectation. If they go win on Friday, that's where we expected them to be. And that, I'm not saying that should be just celebrated, right? Because they were so close to exceeding expectations this season. I mean, they're honestly a handful of plays away from beating Kansas or Oklahoma State and being in the Big 12 championship game and possibly playing in the college football playoff, which is crazy to think about. But I think that they're right where they're supposed to be. And you even look at the non-conference. SMU, they might win the AAC. They might win 10 games. They're playing really good football. Arkansas State, who I thought was maybe one of the worst football teams in the country this year, they're bowl eligible, which is crazy. And again, that was 11, 12 weeks ago, whatever. But still, West Virginia is better than I think any of us thought. Kansas, they've done a great job over there. Oklahoma State obviously has a chance to play for a Big 12 championship. So is it disappointing because we all saw that they had a higher potential maybe? Definitely. But I still think that you look, I said it earlier, 0-5 last year in one-score games, 3-2 this year. And they were so close to being 4-1, 5-0 in those one-score games. I still think that that's a positive takeaway. And you also look, I'm not a big analytics guy, but you look at the analytics and the efficiency ratings, they're almost better in every single category, which is obviously a huge improvement. I think the talent level is getting better. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the recruiting classes coming in, and some of the young guys that have stepped up here in the back half of the season. A lot of those guys are going to get to play next year. And then you just wonder, my big question now is who's coming back? Can they get some of these veteran guys? Can they get a Danny Stutzman, a Billy Bowman, a Jalil Farouk to come back for another year? Because as much as I love some of these young guys and their potential, if you can get some of that really valuable experience, some of those veterans, then you're talking about next year competing again for the 12-team playoff. I'm not going to go say that they can compete for an SEC championship game, but I do think if you get some of those veteran guys back, you win 9-10 games, and maybe you're getting into the 12-team playoff.
It's going to be much different with the 12-team playoff ahead. One of those guys that we'll probably talk about a little bit more on the practice report after we talk to players on Monday evening. Josh, do you think we haven't seen, or do you think that we have seen the last of Tyler Guyton in an Oklahoma uniform?
Guys, I really thought, based on everything we've talked about, and we talked about it on Friday, guys, we were starting to hear rumors, and I mentioned to you all that I'd heard he'd practiced all week.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that. I don't know, if you don't think he's going to play, and and I know a lot of people say, oh, okay, he's just, these games don't matter. He's waiting for the NFL draft. then why is he suiting and in Provo? Like that doesn't make sense to me. I can't figure out what that is and why you would even do that, because you're just wasting that spot. So when we all know on the travel squad, you need everybody you can take with you.
It was very weird.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the writing's probably on the wall there. It's just been handled very strangely, and I don't know how to really make sense of that.
And Brent's comments were, and we'll get into it in the practice report, like you said, Eddie, they're just kind of weird today, saying that they just chose Jacob Sexton over him, which...
I mean, the way that he talked about it, you could only make the assumption that they started Jacob Sexton in front of Tyler Guyton, who's going to be probably a first-round draft pick.
It may be a top 10 pick. I really think he has a chance to jump on some boards, but I don't know. It also wouldn't shock me if Tyler tries to play a little bit on Friday, knowing it's his last game at Oklahoma, because, I mean, I don't think he's playing the bowl game. And also, I mean, look, I don't want to go through the tiebreaker scenarios. I'm done doing the Big 12 tiebreakers. But there is a chance that Oklahoma still sneaks into the Big 12 championship game. And if that were the case, I would anticipate he would play in that type of a game.
Sure.
Absolutely. And, guys, the other thing to remember, TCU's where Tyler Guyton came from.
Yeah.
I mean, so if there's any game he might have a little reason to get back out there, I think we'll know everything if he doesn't start against TCU, because I'm not buying that Jacob Sexton was chosen. I mean, guys, Jacob Sexton started playing right tackle about 3 weeks ago. They didn't pick Tyler Guyton over him, or him over Tyler Guyton. And I think the world of Jake, and I think he's going to be a really good player for Oklahoma, but I'm not buying that story at all.
No doubt about it. Josh, we appreciate it. We look forward to catching up with you on the unofficial 40 this week. That will be coming up on Tuesday. Everything's accelerated this week with Thanksgiving and then obviously the Friday game. But just another chance for you out there on Sooner Scoop or on YouTube watching us on Sooner Scoop, a opportunity to join Soonerscoop.com for $1. You get 2 months off. Use promo code OU1. OU1. That is a special promo for the YouTube watcher out there.
Lots of good stuff on the Soonerscoop.com
no doubt about it.
website.
I know that you're writing about Drake coming up.
Big Drake Stoops story. That'll be, you can read it for $1. That'll be on the website. Obviously, Josh has a lot of good recruiting stuff this week as well. Basketball's coming up. Bob's on top of that. So definitely use this to your advantage. I know there's a lot of people out there that just watch us on YouTube, but we say a lot of good stuff on the website too.
Hey, man, I'll tell you right now, it's a big week for OU basketball, and I know that's something that we're going to talk to Bob about a little bit more in detail. I'm sure we'll hit on it on the unofficial 40 as Bob Prisbillo makes his return this week.
I don't know if I like Josh behind us.
It makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
That's
but
terrifying.
It's kind of like a tripod thing, though. I kind of like that going. So, once again, Josh, we appreciate it. We will talk to you. George and I will be back for the practice report. I keep wanting to call it Tuesday practice report, but I know it's not going to necessarily be a Tuesday practice report because today is Tuesday in the OU football program. Not really, but sort of, with practice on Sunday. My mind's going 90 miles an hour. But we will see you next time on Soonerscoop.com's YouTube channel.